Hey guys, Jeff here, and today I'm going to show you how to get a room ready for a fresh coat of paint. I was a painter for 30 years, and these are the 7 steps I use to follow every time I start a new contract. If you do a good job in the prep stage, your finished work always looks amazing. All right guys, step 1 in my process is to identify what surface I'm dealing with. So we have 2 kinds of paint in the history of mankind. One is oil and one is latex. And what I got here is acetone, 100%. And what we're doing is we're just gonna rub the wall, and you can tell that that's coming off. I mean, I can feel the resistance. It's not a color. I'm just going a straight line. Yeah, and you can see that that changes. Okay, this is all latex. Here's a better one. Now, I've done the test before, and the ceilings in the bathrooms and the bathroom paint was all oil. So this is a combination, and I felt this is a super glossy paint. I'm pretty sure it's oil. We'll just double check. If this comes off yellow, nope, that's just wet. That's what I figured. So now we know. Let's put the lid back on before I go blinding. Now we know the walls are all latex paint. The trim is all oil. So now we know what our process is. Of course, our doors are Luan. Old flat slab, hollow core doors, and it's got a oil-based finish on it. Older doors though, they really reduce the value of the home, okay? So if you go to resell and you got the old doors on it, you're hurting yourself. So if you own your house, consider changing out your doors. So step 1 obviously was understand what you're painting so you know what to buy, because you can't just paint latex over oil unless you use a primer, okay? Step 2, of course, is remove everything that's in the way of the paint job. Now, that includes all of these old cover plates, all right? Doors, light fixtures, blinds, valances, hooks, register cover vents, cold air return grills, everything. Get it all out of the way so that we can do a proper prepping job. Okay, so let me show you how the camera lies. Let's say we have a studio light, and I'm trying to show you the damage in the wall here. You can't see anything. Now you can see it, okay? It's all about casting that shadow. But when you're in your own house, you're gonna wanna make sure every one of these defects are taken care of. Especially because in the wintertime in the Northern Hemisphere, the sun is very low in the sky. So especially like we're in a basement, that light comes through that basement window, it's very low in the sky. And it shows all the imperfections on your ceilings. And in the summertime, the sun's higher and it shows all the imperfections on your walls. Okay guys, so here we go. This is my Radial 360 sander. It's from Richard. This is really good for brand new drywall, okay? It does a nice job of softening edges and doing patches, but check this out. It also does a good job with ridges, okay? And I'm just gonna show you this. It's clean, it's a brand new disc, all right? Let's take a look at the sander, okay? Look at all these little points of contact where there was a chunk or a bump on that wall. All right, the wall itself feels like sandpaper. Wow. Wow. So that took about 15 minutes just to do one wall, and it's worth it. So remember, in this particular house, it's 50 years old. It's a lot of work to catch up on. Hopefully your project isn't quite as severe. And the secret is to put enough pressure that you get rid of these little pitted marks, right? If you don't use enough pressure to get rid of the pits, then you're gonna have to do a second coat. But you see how the vinyl surface just comes right off the back? Okay? No tools necessary. Grab yourself a grouting sponge, okay? These are amazing because they are really durable, okay? They will last forever. Okay? Now, we're gonna get in here. And the reason you want to use a grouting sponge is because it is 8 inches wide. Okay? And you're just putting light pressure enough that you can soak that paper. Make sure you get it all in there. Use a drop cloth if you need to protect your flooring. Now you'll see that it's nice and dark. There's an adhesive, and it's a water-based adhesive on the back side of that paper. So we've got to be a little patient here, all right? What we're going to do is we're going to wet it 3 or 4 times, maybe 5, okay? The smaller the project, the more times you can wet it. Or you can just give it a couple of minutes in between wetting so that the water has a chance to transfer to the back side of that paper and loosen up that glue. Now that's let go pretty good, isn't it? That's not too much of a fight. That was easier. If I'd been more patient and added another layer of water, it would have just wiped right off the wall. The point is, knowing that you can be patient makes taking wallpaper off really simple, because now I don't have any damage on that ceiling that I got to fix. Now, you're going to see old trim. Right, it's really glossy. Semi-gloss oil paint, even with a flat oil over top, can have problems with bonding. First thing we want to do is get rid of all these old paint drips. Take your sander. And that's it. Okay? Now, latex paint, we paint from the top down. Oil paint, you paint from the bottom up. Because it pulls so much better, okay? Okay, so we go down to the bottom, and we can pull again. Pull again. Brand new brush. Haven't even had it full of paint yet before. I just did 5 feet of trim. Okay? Less is more in this environment. Flat oil paint bonds to latex. Okay? It's perfectly safe. So, we go like this, because we don't want to have our latex wall paint coming in contact with the oil paint on that trim, because our process is going to be to do the ceilings, then all of the casings, and then the walls. So if I don't prime this with the flat oil, my new latex paint isn't going to bond to the side. I'm going to run into trouble. Okay? And it'll start to peel over time. Less is more when you're dealing with oil, okay? And buy yourself a cheap brush, because you don't want to clean this when you're done. You want to throw it in the garbage. And you can stretch it, and you can get it all over your walls and get it all over your ceiling. Just don't get it all over your floor if you're planning on keeping them. Because this won't come off without using Varsol. And you're going to want to do it within 12 hours. Okay? So if you do make a mess, make sure you have some Varsol on handy. Here we go. Dry paint, pull, pull, pull. There we go. Now that it's almost dry, I'll get a thin coat up there. All right. Whew. So I'm going to finish painting the rest of this trim, and then we're going to let all of this mud work dry, and we're going to come back tomorrow morning. All right, guys, welcome back. The mud is dry. We are ready for the next stage in our process. We're still in prep phase, and it's time to sand. And here is my sanding block. Check this out. It's not a rectangle. You want to get the one with the slope side. Very important, and I'll show you why right now. When we're sanding this compound, first of all, it's beige, it's lightweight, it's easy to sand. You have an option. You can sand mud on mud. If you do that, you're going to put a groove on one of the sides. That's just the way it works, okay? So when you have mud and mud on the corner, you want this corner here. You place this triangle piece inside the corner, all right? And you sand this way. And you sand this way, and that will avoid getting that groove. Because when you go to paint, you're going to have a line, you're going to have to stop, you're going to have to come back, you're going to have to fill that line, and then you're going to have to sand it and prime it all over again. So to avoid going backwards before you go forwards, get the right equipment, okay? That's nice and easy. There we go. And we could just sand it all these spots, circular motions. Remember, we used a flat knife. We filled all of those bumps, and now we're sanding the extra mud off. We just go like that. You can check with your hand. If you feel any texture, any ridges, sand those ridges down, because any ridge that's on this wall after you're done and you prime will be there, and then you're going to go back a step and fill ridges. And so this is where the money is, okay? This is the part of the job where you've got to just make sure you're extremely happy with everything you've done. You don't want to over sand because this is a sponge and it is textured. So if you push too hard, you're going to scoop all the mud out of all of those grooves, okay? Okay, now we have a huge surface here. And most of these patches are the same. It's just a little bit of mud. So I'm going to show you my next tool that I'm going to use to be efficient. This is my trusty paint stick, and it is on a radial sander. We are using a 180 grit. All right, when we're sanding, you can go to 220, but I like 180 because it's good for the drywall compound, and it's good for sanding in between the coats of paint. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But now what we do is we have this beautiful little action here where I can sand the whole wall at once. And because it's not mechanical, most of the sand will just be rubbed off the wall and fall to the ground. This is a great time to pull something like this out. It makes really quick work of hard to reach areas. Trust me, that's done. Now we have to use our integrity. Now we come back with our hand. We're checking little issues anywhere. Okay. Looking, feeling those ridges. If you feel it, fix it. Just because it looks like something's wrong doesn't mean there is. Okay, well, if you're a fan of the channel, you already know I'm going to reach for my kills. And this is a flat oil-based aerosol spray, and it dries in 5 to 10 minutes, regardless of the conditions. And meet his little brother, Kills Upshot, right? Kills is great, but this can you want to keep vertical when you're working with it. If you've got a stain on the ceiling, you're going to need this, all right? Because this one shoots straight up. Now, in this house, 1974, I'm almost going to guarantee you they had an oil furnace in the beginning. So what we want to do is when we're going to be painting that, we want to stain block the stain, all right? Here we go. We're going to hit it with this lovely flat oil primer sealer that blocks the color and seals it so that when we add our ceiling paint after that's dried, none of that black line comes through, okay? This is money in the bank. Okay, here we go. Make sure she's all shook up. Now listen, if you're enjoying this information and you like this kind of content, or you like getting advice from someone who is in the trenches and in the trades all of their life, then make sure you consider joining us in a membership program for just a few bucks a month. You can be in the membership, join us on our Discord, okay? And then you can send me pictures and ask questions no matter where you live in the world, and I can give you advice and help you with my experience. And don't forget, if you appreciate this, make sure you like the video. There we are, and subscribe to the channel. By the way, that's black marker. Now watch this. It's going to just totally disappear. All right, this is what flat oil stain blocking does. So I don't care what your kids have done to their house. You can eliminate that from having any impact on your finished paint job. Now just remember, if you're using this product, it is an oil, so when you put your latex on it, you're going to want to give it about an hour or so to dry, because now the paint has to dry into the air, not into the wall. Here's how I like to paint. And I don't need all that paint in here today, okay? But what I do like to have is a place where I can put my brush. Nope, not enough yet. There we go. In the can. All right, now my brush stays wet. I know it's just primer. We don't have a cut and roll rule, but we want to keep things wet. So we're going to start off with doing the roll. Oh, I'm a big boy. I like to stand up when I'm loading my tray. Here we go. Just load it back, roll it forward. Now that everything's wet, it'll load up a lot better. All right, and the goal here is simply to cover everything floor to ceiling. We're going to be painting the ceiling, we're going to be painting the trim. We don't have to do a whole lot of brushwork here. All right, we're just getting the primer on the wall. Make sure that every patch is covered and we don't have any drips. Those are really the only two considerations. Yeah, got a drip, got to grab that. All right, if you do not prime your patches, what you will have is drywall compound that's not sealed. It'll absorb the paint differently than the areas around it. And then when your 2 coats of finished paint are on the wall, it'll flash. And what flashing is just a disparity in color. Okay? Paint is actually not designed to be soaked up into the wall. It's designed to sit on the surface. But when drywall compound is sitting there, it absorbs the paint. It doesn't sit on the surface. So priming, in this case, literally means to seal the drywall so the paint will sit on the surface. And the only thing that gets sucked in is the moisture content, not all of the other parts of the paint. Use a good primer. It doesn't make a mess. Like with all paints, you can buy a really cheap primer and it's mostly water. Water does not seal drywall. And it can't just say primer, okay? The label literally has to say drywall sealer primer. If it doesn't say drywall sealer, you're not sealing the drywall, you're just wetting the drywall. And wet drywall flashes too. So you can't use primer that's designed for anything else other than drywall sealing, because the word primer is not synonymous with drywall priming. There's one aspect of the prep work that we still have to do, and that is the caulking. Now, wherever we have 2 different building materials joined together, you're going to have expansion and contraction, and you're going to have separation. You're going to get shadows. Things like this line here, this line here. It can happen up in the ceiling to the wall. It can happen around the door casing. Here's a great example. Here's an example of somebody ripped the casing custom, but that's a gap, that's a shadow. Every time you see a shadow, it looks imperfect. It looks like it needs to be filled. This one's designed for crown molding. It's designed for different building materials. So drywall to wood or drywall to MDF, okay? And this has that stretchability so that it won't crack in the future. Now, if you're like me, you realize already at this point, there's a lot of work going on here. You don't want to have cracks showing up down the road. It's worth the $2 to be crack proof, okay? Here we go. We cut off the tip on a bit of an angle. We slide it in, load it up, we're good to go. It's that simple. All right, so let's take care of this one first, obviously. But even my casing, now that I've got my primer on here, my flat oil primer, I'm transitioned, I can go to latex product. Okay. Now we're gonna get a bead, even if you don't see a crack, everywhere where you know it could crack in the future, lay that healthy bead and eliminate the opportunity for that to happen. Okay, and we're just gonna go gentle with the finger because we wanna leave that concave nicely filled. We're not looking for a sharp line in there. We're looking for a simple little curve, nice and easy. That little bit of material there is going to give us the kind of protection that we're looking for so that when we're done our paint job, we don't get any shadows. Simple. Clean it off. We're gonna go this way. Okay, and we're looking to overfill, and then we can use our finger to come back and smooth it in. Whoops, here we are. And the better you are with this, the faster you can go, the more pressure you need. Always thumb the end, takes the bar back, releases the pressure. It won't keep squeezing out of the top, okay? And then, we just set it and run it. There we go. Perfect every time. Even at this point in the production, if you're going, oh my God, there's a scratch in the wall, I never got it before, you can fill it with caulking, use your 4-inch putty knife, just flatten it out, lots of pressure, Give it about 30 minutes and you're ready to paint. Problem solved. And then traditionally what everybody will say is, okay, now it's time to do this. Pull out the blue tape. We're gonna put it all over the walls, all over the baseboards. We're gonna isolate the areas. What a waste of time, okay? That's just junk. Tape was invented to make money and to make you hate the process. I think it was invented by painters just so that everybody would want to hire a painter instead of doing it themselves. Here's our ceiling paint. All right, there we go. Now there are lots of different paint that you can use as a ceiling paint. Different places have got different things, and it's generally you're looking for something flat. Something without acrylic is really helpful. Acrylic is an additive that makes things shiny. And it's also an additive that likes to filter itself in the paint when it's in the can. As soon as you're done shaking, you have a mixture, not a solution. So you have different components shared evenly throughout the gallon of paint. As soon as you set that down, they start to settle and separate, okay? And so a few minutes will go by, and then you'll put more paint in here, and then now you've got a different level of acrylic. So you start out nice and flat, you go shinier, and by the time you get to the end, it's really shiny. Then you go to the second coat, it's even shinier, and then you'll do a little touch-up at the very end one day, or months down the road, something will happen. You pull out that ceiling paint. We're gonna touch up the ceiling, and it has a shiny spot, and you're like, what happened? It's acrylic. Don't get a ceiling paint with acrylic in it. Get dead flat, okay? The other thing you can use is you can use your drywall primer as a ceiling paint if you need to. If you're just doing one room, do the patches and then do the ceiling with the same paint, okay? Make your life simple. A good quality ceiling paint is a good quality primer. Now, so here we are. Let's just recap. We've got ceiling in the closet and ceiling in the room to do. Now, sealing in the closet is easy, and you don't ever want to paint holding the roller. It's exhausting, okay? Always get the stick. Here's what the stick does for you. It lets you keep your hands down here below your heart. Your heart is pumping blood to your arms, okay? The minute you take this off, now look where you're pumping your blood. You're gonna work like this all day, okay? You're gonna not even get through the ceiling, and you're gonna need to have a nap. That's just crazy. Buy the stick. Stay efficient. You'll enjoy painting if you've got a nice stick. Now we're gonna come in here, all right? And we're not gonna worry about if we get any of this on the walls, because we paint the walls next, all right? There we are. And then we're gonna back roll. Okay. This is how you do a ceiling in a closet. We're gonna paint the rest of the big room. Always do your closet first. You'll notice there's a header. Not a lot of airflow in here. It takes longer to dry. Okay, so you do the closet first, and then you do the big room. All right, and there's one other rule. We have a window here. So when you're painting a ceiling, you want to go in two different directions. That's how you get good coverage. Your first coat, you go against the window. So the light's coming this way, you paint against the window, okay? Second coat, you turn and you paint the opposite direction. The second coat is the one that you don't have a chance to do any work with. If you have any lines at all in the ceiling, you want those lines to finish in the same direction the sunlight's coming into the room. Make sense? So then you don't see shadows. Paint an entire length of the room in one pass. All right? We'll come out a couple of inches past our wet spot, and then we're gonna go roll back over the original edge, right down the middle. It's called back rolling, all right? And we're not pushing hard. As soon as you start pushing hard, you're leaving a line of paint on the ceiling. There we go, all right? Okay, now, we're gonna hit the ceiling for the second time. Inside a closet, there is no rule. This bulkhead means the sun isn't going directly across the ceiling in the closet. So we'll take the same pass and make it simple. But before we roll the ceiling this time, we're gonna cut the edges. Okay, so we're gonna take our brush and we're going to just make sure that we have a nice full coverage right into that crack, because right here is the issue. You want to paint the ceiling and the wall at the same time here. Okay, you want to make sure, guarantee there's paint in that gap. If you don't, then when you go to cut the wall, you're going to see 3 colors there instead of 2. That always looks funny, doesn't it? All right, now, done cutting my ceiling. We're going to give it a roll, and then we're going to cut the rest of the ceiling edge out here as well. Remember, we want to keep a wet edge, all right? The wet edge is what makes a paint job good. Never letting paint dry on your surface for more than 5 minutes. That's the secret. I'm going to get that roll as close to the wall without scratching it as I can. And then I'm going to turn around and get the last piece on this wall as well. All right, that one's done. We're going to cut and roll the ceiling. Of course, like we talked about, we're going to go in the opposite direction, which means since I want my paint to stay wet, I'm painting this line. I have to paint halfway into the room and then the other half of the room. Okay, so I want to cut right here. All right, and then I want to cut the end walls as I go. Because if I cut this entire room, it'll take me 20 minutes to half an hour to paint the ceiling. Well, that means I've got dry paint and I can't roll into my brush lines. Okay, so consider that rule about keeping things wet. I've got about a 2.5 to 3 inch wet spot here now, but I'm guaranteed that my ceiling is all the same color, no more shadows, no discoloration. The first line of paint that I get is going to be about this wide. Okay, so let's go 2 or 3 lines. That's enough. We'll set the can down and we'll just keep going and going and going as we go. Nice and gentle, a couple inches off the wall. All right, this is about the middle of the room. And then we're going to come back, put an extra half roller wide. All right, remember, you don't want to paint too much at a time. If you're painting too much area, you're going to find yourself pushing on the roller to squeeze the paint out. Now I'm coming back near the wall to get rid of those brush lines. Okay, here we are. You see, I put my tray where my paint line on the ceiling is, perpendicular. But that's my brush line. So now, before I go any further, I gotta keep my wet edge. And do the next few feet. So now this is where I finished painting with the roller. That's now the extension of my wet edge where the can sits. So now I know what I'm doing. Now I'm gonna come over here. Okay. I know I'm gonna be painting here, so I'll move that there. It is almost impossible to see that line. Now if you walk around the room, you can start to see where your wet edge is. There you go. We'll come out to the middle, just past the window there. Another half a. Okay. And now we'll go back. Catch up that wet edge. Roll over that old wet edge. And then back roll towards the new wet edge. There we are. Now that is as easy as painting a ceiling is ever going to get. Okay. So I'm over here finishing off the rest of my cut as I finish painting the ceiling. And it hits me. You know, Jeff, you're so busy telling people how to paint a room. You forgot to paint it properly. So here, cheers to everybody who's in the comments going, Jeff, you rolled the room the wrong way the first and second coat. Correct, I did. And everybody who caught that, you're really paying attention. This is the nature of the business, right? I'm over here trying to work and do good work and think about how to make a video and produce it at the same time. And yeah, I got it upside down backwards. My bad. Do as I say, not as I do. Cheers.